Well, continuing with my college football game against the great team and the roster discussion videos. Today I'll be doing the Georgia Bulldogs. So Kirby Smart had the number two ranked recruiting class in the country in 2025, and in 2024 he had the number one ranked recruiting class. And starting on the offensive side, Georgia last year took a pretty big step back offensively, averaging only at 28.9 points per game. But I expect them to still be solid on the offensive side. So at quarterback, Gunnar Stockton, I haven't seen enough of him to be convinced that he's going to be great, but I do think he will be solid. And he's already went against some of the best competition. Against Texas, he played the second half only and threw for 71 yards, which is not much, even for a half. But he was accurate in that game, completing 75% of his passes. But he did throw an interception. And against Notre Dame in the playoff game, he threw for 234 and a touchdown and completed 62.5% of his passes, which was pretty good for going against Notre Dame's defense. But Gunnar Stockton was supposed to be a dual threat quarterback, and that certainly wasn't seen from him last year. Against Texas, he had 8 runs for only 8 yards, and then against Notre Dame, 10 runs for negative 23 yards. And at wide receiver, Georgia loses their top two from last year, Arian Smith and Dominic Lovett. But Georgia's wide receivers led the country and dropped last year. So it's hard to imagine Georgia's wide receivers being as bad this year as they were last year. So they returned Dylan Bell, who had last year in 13 games 43 catches for 466 and 4 touchdowns, averaging 10.4 a catch. And they bring in from Texas A&M Noah Thomas, who had last year 39 catches for 574 and 8 touchdowns, averaging 14.7 per catch. And a good thing about Noah Thomas is that he's a really tall wide receiver at 6'6", and Zachariah Branch that they brought in from USC. I would say has the highest ceiling of all of the Georgia wide receivers. I talked about his numbers in my top 10 transfers video, and they get back Colby Young from a suspension that caused him to miss all but the first 5 games of the season last year. And he didn't do a lot in those 5 games, but he actually transferred to Georgia last year from Miami. And Miami in 2023, he had 47 catches for 563 and 5 touchdowns, averaging 12 yards a catch. And at running back, Georgia just wasn't their usual selves in the run game last year. They're usually one of the best rushing teams in the country, and last year they ranked 102nd in rushing yards per game, averaging only 124.4. I would expect that to be better this year. So they've got Nate Frazier, who is a good running back. He had last year at 671 yards and 8 touchdowns on 133 carries, averaging 5 yards a carry. And they bring in from Illinois Josh McCray, who is a good running back. He had last year in 12 games 609 yards and 10 touchdowns on 117 carries, averaging 5.2 a carry. And against the South Carolina and Illinois bowl game, he had 114 and 2 touchdowns on only 13 carries. So I think that Frazier and McCray will make a good, but maybe not great, running back combination. And on the offensive line, Georgia might take a step back again because they lose starting guards Dylan Fairchild and Tate Ratledge, and tackle Xavier Truss, and starting center Jared Wilson, who are all off to the NFL. The only starter they return on the offensive line is tackle Ernest Green, who was the worst starter on uh, the offensive line last year. He gave up 30 total pressures, which is not great, but he did only allow 2 sacks. And Georgia has three other players on the offensive line that have starting experience. And with Kirby Smart, who's a line of scrimmage expert coaching them, I would expect them to still be okay on the offensive line. And on the defensive side, Georgia averaged giving up 18.2 points per game last year, which was very good, but it was down from their defense uh, is the 3 years before that. And their defense might take a step back again this year, but of course, I would expect them to still have a good defense. But they lose Michael Williams and Jalen Walker, so they're going to need new pass rushers. And they lose Smile Munden, a really good linebacker, and Malachi Starks, who was probably the second best safety in the country last season. And on the defensive line, the only experienced player that Georgia has coming back is Christian Miller, who started 10 games and played in 12 games last season and had 27 tackles and 1.5 sacks and 19 total quarterback pressures and a pass breakup. Uh, so the defensive line may take a step back, but I would still expect it to be good because they have Kirby Smart coaching them. And at linebacker, they returned C.J. Allen, who had last year 76 tackles and 5 total pressures and 4 pass breakups and an interception. And they've got Raylan Wilson, a 4 star who played in every game last year, but only made one start, and he had 47 tackles and 1.5 sacks and 6 total pressures and a pass breakup and a forced fumble and fumble recovery. And they bring in from Army Elo Madozi, who is a really good pass rusher. He had last year 34 tackles and 6.5 sacks and 37 total pressures. And in the secondary at cornerback, they return Dalen Everett, one of the best cornerbacks in the country, who had last year 58 tackles and 3 pass breakups and 3 interceptions and a sack and 2 forced fumbles and a fumble recovery. And the other starting corner will be Daniel Harris, a 4 star who played in 13 games and made four starts last year and had 22 tackles and three pass breakups. And at safety, they have KJ Bolden, a five-star who uh, I think has a chance to be an All-American player. So last year he played in all 14 games and only made two starts, but he still had 59 tackles and a sack and a forced fumble and an interception and a pass breakup, and they've got Janelle Agario, who's a four-star, who played in 11 games last year, and he didn't make any starts, uh, but he had 26 tackles and four quarterback pressures, and they bring in from UAB a good safety, Adrian Maddox, who had last year 44 tackles and seven pass breakups and a pick six and two forced fumbles. So they should be good at linebacker and in the secondary. And on special teams, they return one of the best kickers in the country, Peyton Woodring, who made 21 of 23 field goals last season. And the only two he missed were from 50 plus yards away, and he made three out of five of those. And Zachariah Branch, I think, will be a big help to them with kick returns and punt returns. So now for the game by game predictions, starting with Marshall. This will be a big blowout win for Georgia. They'll probably get to play their second string the whole second half. And then Austin P. This will be another big blowout win for Georgia, where they'll almost for sure be playing their second string the whole second half. And now on the road at Tennessee. So it's hard to imagine Josh Heupel getting over his struggles to score points and move the ball against Georgia when he loses his quarterback and Dylan Sampson at running back and all of his best wide receivers and most of his offensive line. While Tennessee and Georgia both had one of the best defenses in the country last year, and they both lose a lot, I would trust Kirby Smart more than I would Josh Heupel to rebuild the defense. So I think Georgia will get this win by around two touchdowns in a competitive game where they pull away in the fourth quarter. And now Alabama. So while both teams are questionable at quarterback, Alabama probably even more questionable than Georgia is. Both teams are pretty similar at wide receiver, and Georgia is, I would say, better at running back than Alabama is. But Alabama, I think, is going to be better at the line of scrimmage this year than Georgia will be, and Alabama, I think, is a little bit better at linebacker. Now, both teams are pretty similar in the secondary, but I have a feeling that Alabama will beat Georgia again because they always do. But I think this will be a close game. And now Kentucky. So Georgia has so much more talent than Kentucky does, and they're a much better coach team too. So I actually think that they'll beat Kentucky fairly easily this year, with the game being at home, and now on the road at Auburn. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a one-score game because the game is at Auburn. But Georgia, I would say if their quarterback at Gunner Stockton uh, is better than Jackson Arnold is from what I've seen of both quarterbacks. And Georgia, it has better players at the line of scrimmage than Auburn does, and they've got a better defense, I think, and the running back room I think is better than Auburn's is too now because Auburn loses their star running back, Jarquez Hunter, and Georgia's way ahead of Auburn when it comes to coaching too. So I've got to go with Georgia to get this win. And now Ole Miss. While neither Pace quarterback has much non-garbage time experience, Gunnar Stockton has a game and a half, and Austin Simmons from Ole Miss only has one drive. Now that came against Georgia, and he certainly didn't do anything in that drive to make me think he won't be any good this year. And both teams are similar at wide receiver. And Georgia, though, I think has a better running back room than Ole Miss does. Now, Ole Miss has more experience than Georgia does on their offensive line, not as a team, but because of the transfers that they brought in. And Ole Miss, I still think, because of the transfers they brought in, might have a pretty good defense, but Georgia. I think it will be better defensively than they will. And I have a feeling that Georgia will get revenge on Ole Miss in a pretty close game. And now Florida. So the biggest difference between these two teams is coaching, and not just the head coach, but Georgia's whole coaching staff is so much better than Florida's is. And I've not seen anything from DJ Lagway to make me think he's going to be a better quarterback than Gunnar Stockton will be. And Florida, though, I do think looking at the roster, might have a pretty good defense. But Georgia's, I think, will be better. And Georgia has a better wide receiver room than Florida does. Now, Florida's running back room is pretty good, but I think this will be a competitive game. But Georgia will pull away in the fourth quarter and win by about two touchdowns. Because I don't think Florida's offense is going to be able to do very much in this game. And now on the road at Mississippi State, this should be a big blowout win for Georgia. Uh, mm, the coaching and talent comparison between Georgia and Mississippi State, Georgia's like on a different universe better than Mississippi State is. And Texas. This one I think is going to be a close one that I could see going either way. And at quarterback, while Arch Manning has more experience than Gunnar Stockton does, Gunnar Stockton faced much tougher competition than Arch Manning did. And both teams are pretty similar at wide receiver and at running back. But Georgia has more experience on their offensive line than Texas does. Now, Texas, I think, has a better defense than Georgia does. But with this game being at Georgia and with Kirby Smart, I would say being a better coach than Steve Sarkisian is because he beat him twice last year. I'm going to go with Georgia to get this win. And now Charlotte, this will be a big blowout win for Georgia. They'll probably win this one by like 40 points and play their second string the whole second half. And now on the road at Georgia Tech. I think this will be a close game, and I had a hard time making my prediction for it because Brent Key has turned Georgia Tech into a strong physical team, and their quarterback Haynes King is a good quarterback, and they're gonna have a good run game. And uh, I do though think that Georgia is better than Georgia Tech defensively, even though Georgia Tech's defense has become solid. Georgia has much more talent still than Georgia Tech does, and they still are quite a bit ahead of Georgia Tech when it comes to coaching. But I'm gonna go with Georgia to get this win because of that. So my final prediction for Georgia is 11-1 overall and 7-1 in the conference, and this will for sure get them back to the college football playoff. And there's a good chance it will get them into the SEC championship. So thanks for watching and please subscribe and I'll be back soon.